tend to take the nice customer's money.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 2 of Dan Explores Anime as I explore anime. The title's pretty self-explanatory. This is a series about me watching anime shows, anime movies, and we're really going to focus on the movies for now because there's so much to get into. Things that I have never seen before but that I've heard for so long, over so many years, are great. The first episode was about My Neighbor Totoro, and I am sticking with Studio Ghibli for a while, and I actually jumped ahead. I thought about sticking in rough chronological order, but I heard so much about Spirited Away and how great this movie was that I decided to put it in at number 2 as I explore anime. And Spirited Away actually is also the second film to win the Oscar for Best Animated Film. It's also currently the only hand-drawn animation film to win the Academy Award. It is as advertised. This film did not disappoint. Now, if you haven't seen Spirited Away, it's about Chihiro, a young girl who's moving with her family, a setup that's very similar to the setup from My Neighbor Totoro. She stumbles upon an enchanted bathhouse and is enlisted to work there by a witch named Yubaba. She's renamed Sen, and she discovers all kinds of spirits and enchantments. There's a dragon named Haku, who is also her best friend. Such a rich and vibrant world for this movie to explore. And I love that this movie is largely set in one location. This bathhouse constitutes the setting for a good part of the film, but there's so much richness to it and so much depth in both characters, character design. This world feels so lived in and spiritual and real, even though it is a fantastical world, that it doesn't feel claustrophobic.
Our guest is still here, you idiots.
I'm really looking forward to rewatching this film because there are so many small touches and little things. There are even just some throwaway things that I found really funny. One of my favorites was Yubaba's telephone.
Is it a human?
I'm not quite sure.
It's a little touch like that that only underscores how rich and magical this world is. I thought the character design in this movie was great. I love the character design of Yubaba because she is both comical and sinister depending on the scene and how you need to see her. We have very sinister things like her nails against Sen's throat.
And work you until you breathe your very last breath.
But at other times, that design works in a comedic way. I love when she's covered with vomit, essentially, and you just see the outline of her large, oversized face underneath that. That's using the character design for humor. And then there's where it's a mix of both, where she bursts into flames asking where her big, weird baby is.
What did you do with my baby?
The stink spirit as well, I thought was a great character design because through the design of that character, you really can feel just how vile this creature is. No Face, obviously an image that I was familiar with, albeit without context from this film. It is kind of the key image of Sen and No Face sitting on the train. But I liked the evolution of this character. When you see him, there's not much menace to him. It feels like just a friendly spirit, perhaps somebody that only Sen can see, but somebody who's there to be a friend to her.
What? They're all for me?
Then you see this menacing side of No Face and the fact that he literally is consuming everything in his path. But toward the end, there's a misunderstood monster aspect to him, and he's pitiful once he leaves the bathhouse, and you see that he really is just in search of something. It's almost a Frankenstein's monster kind of feel to him.
No Face, where did you learn to spin thread? You're really good at this.
And I like that you took a non-verbal character and made him interesting, gave him really kind of an arc. It just goes to show that to Studio Ghibli, even these quote-unquote what could be sidekick characters are important to characterize.
No Face, why don't you stay with me? I could use a good helper.
There are a couple of nods to animation and its legacy. Of course, the lamp that we meet late in the film is a fairly obvious tip of the cap to Pixar. It just shows that there is a commonality and a bond between these artists, even if they work in slightly different fields, hand-drawn animation versus computer animation. I also thought that there was a similarity to the Disney Pinocchio film. The way that Sen's parents turned into pigs reminded me a lot of the little boys turning into donkeys.
Mama!
this idea of a human being transformed against their will into a creature with no autonomy, it really is a scary thought. That was the first thing that I thought of, was it really keys into that elemental feel that Pinocchio was also able to capture. As I mentioned, the hand-drawn animation remains stunning, and I'm looking forward to watching even more of these films, not just for Studio Ghibli, but in the anime genre in general, because I do feel like it is a skill that is worth preserving. Of course, most of the animation that we see these days is done on a computer, and I'm not saying that it is inferior in any way, but it is good to, I think, maintain all methods of production when we're talking about things like this. We have machines now that can make swords, that can make blades and weaponry far quicker and more efficiently than a blacksmith can do. However, I think that smithing is a trade that should be preserved, because there is a certain ineffable quality to a handmade blade that you're not going to get from one that comes from a machine. Now, does that mean that it is inferior in any way? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I just mean that there are different methods of production, but they all have different flavors to them. And the flavor and the richness that you get from the hand-drawn animation in this film, and from a lot of films that are hand-drawn still to this day, even though there aren't that many, it is a different feel. And so I do hope that even as computer technology is able to produce more beautiful computer-generated animation, that the art of hand-drawn animation survives, even if there aren't many left that still practice it, because it is an invaluable and really irreplaceable way to tell a story. Overall, I found Spirited Away to be a really good mix of the whimsical, the grotesque, the comical, the sentimental. It juggled so many different tones so well. It was able to immerse you in this world. It was in some ways similar to My Neighbor Totoro in that it did not necessarily focus on a huge overarching plot. It was much more concerned in immersing you into the world of these characters. This is an approach now, 2 films in a row that I've seen from Studio Ghibli, that has worked incredibly well. I can't really answer which one I liked better, because I think that when you get to a certain point of enjoying a movie, then you just like them both a lot. And I liked both of these movies a lot. You worry about when you hear things being hyped up for so long that they're not going to meet expectation, but so far with Studio Ghibli, both of these movies have met my expectations, and I'm really excited to dive into even more. As I did with My Neighbor Totoro, and as I'm going to continue to do, there is, of course, the age-old subbed versus dubbed question. And my conclusion on this film was very similar to what I found with My Neighbor Totoro, which was that I found the English dub to be done very well. It's the version of the movie that I watched first, and I really, really enjoyed the film. When you go back, of course, it is great to hear the film in its native language, and there are some differences. As I mentioned, there are some lines that are added in the English version that are not in the original version. However, I'm going to continue with my finding that I really feel like for Spirited Away, either version is acceptable. Perhaps if you're new to anime, as I am, start with the dubbed version and then transition to the subbed version. But I really don't think that you can go wrong with either of them in this case. So that is my second in a series of explorations on anime. What did you think? If you've seen Spirited Away, you probably have known how good this movie is for a very long time. I'm glad that I finally know how good it is. But what are some other suggestions that you might have? I can already tell you what my next one is going to be. I'm going to stick with Studio Ghibli and actually look at the very first official Studio Ghibli film, which is Castle in the Sky. I'm really excited to look at that. And then afterwards, I think I may jump away and check out perhaps a more recent title, one that has come up many, many times in your suggestions. But I'm also open to any other possibilities, and luckily there are so many possibilities for me to take. What do you think I should take on next? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please share it. Also, please be sure to like the video and subscribe. Hit that bell if you want to be notified when I come out with my next Dan Explores anime video. And I want to thank everyone over on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. I have such a great group of patrons over there that have been so incredibly vocal and have given their input on everything that I've been doing. And I want to thank these patrons in particular. These are just a few of my producer level patrons that have really just cheered me on as I've made this jump, and that continue to give me advice, support, everything that you can possibly imagine. These have been so great. And if you want to join them, you can. patreon.com/Dan Murrell. I'd love to have you over there. We've got the monthly movie commentary. We have the monthly movie club. There is a Patreon exclusive show called Dan Decides that I do. A lot of fun stuff, and I hope to see you there. And I hope to see you right back here. Thank you so much for joining me, and be sure to come back next time, not just for the next anime review, but for news, for reviews, for charts. It's just the beginning of what we're going to be doing on this channel, and I'm excited to have you on board. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.